Hello, everyone. I'm Ruchika. I've worked with brands like Unilever, Red Bull, Durex in the past, and I'm currently brand director at lastminute.com. I'm hoping to share some stories from my experiences on building brands across different geographies. So first things first, this is a statement I stand by. A brand that speaks to everyone speaks to no one. Right? So in the journey to build a brand, I think the first and most important point is to really distill and identify who are we trying to speak to. How many of us actually have our consumer mapping done, where we say the consumer we are trying to target is between the age of 18 to 55. Now that's pretty much everyone who can possibly buy your brand. So that is a very broad demographic that you're trying to target. So really honing in on who you're trying to speak to, but not just from a demographic perspective, from an attitudinal understanding of who this person is. Really, like if you had to sit and describe someone almost like a friend, what would this person, your consumer, sound like? Are they excited, and are they, or just regular people? Are they mainstream? Are they pushing boundaries? Are they indulgent? Or are they actually just seeking the best value? Are they conservatives? Or are they people who are standing out there for causes that they believe in? All of these, as simple as it may sound, are very important attitudinal understanding to really define the consumer. And in addition to that, firstly, how you go about doing it, it could range anything from big, massive researches if you're sitting with big budgets, or even simple things like social listening, reading threads like Reddit can actually help you understanding this attitudinal consumer. And then identifying their propensity to spend on the category is the second layer. Again, if you have the research, it's easy. But if you don't, you can make your biggest bets on the attitudinal understanding of this consumer. And this is actually an image I'm sure many of you in the room might have seen already, but it's a great example of how demographic understanding is probably not the smartest way to go about when you are defining your consumer. Because two people could be exactly the same demographically and very different attitudinally. So the first step on this journey is really knowing your consumer. The second step on the journey is defining the brand message and personality. And literally in a single line, nothing complicated, nothing big, nothing fancy, not those big decks that we have, but if you had the chance to meet your consumer, what is that one sentence that you want to tell them? And they need to get it. So putting that down on a piece of paper becomes as important. And it's not as easy. So in the different roles that I've actually done on brand transformation, this is probably the toughest step in the journey, because different departments, different people in the organization have a different view on what is the most important message to land with that consumer. So getting everyone in the room, defining that, along with the brand personality. In my time at Red Bull, the brand personality was such a big part of everything we did. It was not only written on the walls and in the presentations, but it was a part of the interview question. They actually hired people who were the Red Bull brand personified. And it was a very important question. So they lived the brand, they hired people like that to ensure that it comes to life. So a single-minded message along with the brand personality, all written down on one slide, can go a long way in really helping simplify and land the message that we're trying to land with the consumer. And here's a beautiful example of a recent campaign that I came across from Gymshark. We do gym. They could be doing anything with that product line that they're selling. And they could be, as most brands, jump on that wagon and talk about, we want to appeal to the runner and we want to appeal to the athleisure. But they're like, right, what is the one thing we want to communicate? We do gym. And at lastminute.com, we were faced with a very similar challenge very recently. So for those of you who've been around in the region for a while, 25 years ago, we were a movie spa theater experience brand. Over the years, our product evolved to become a travel provider, a holiday package provider. However, we shied away from two things. One, really owning our last-minute name. Because when it comes to movie spa theaters, last minute is an attractive space to play with. But when it comes to travel, we weren't really sure if we wanted to go in and own that space. So over the past few years, we kind of wanted to own it, but not so much. But also, secondly, we did not fully land the fact that we are now moving away from the product experiences and want to actually land holiday packages. So we went through a bit of transformation journey ourselves. And when it comes to travel, to be fair, it's a very cluttered category. Now, I'm not saying other categories are not, but travel for sure is. Now, these are actual images from when Northern Lights last year were a big moment to travel, and everyone from airlines to hotels to travel influencers, and even my personal friends were posting pictures like this. So really, we asked ourselves, during winters, it's the Northern Lights. During summers, it's the sun and the beach. How do we really go in there and own something that we could be remembered for? So a few things that we mapped out, we said, right, we want to do something that's truly us, which is owning the last-minute name, because it is an attractive space, after research, of course. And secondly, we don't want to inspire people to travel, because there's enough and more happening in that category already. What we want to do is go in a moment and be relatable when people are actually making the booking. So this is a visual from our latest summer campaign. And as odd as that looks, when everyone else is talking about the sun and the beach, we're talking about a moment when people actually make their holiday booking on the toilet seats. And it is a fact. How many of us have actually done this? So of course, we've just launched this campaign, and the initial reaction has been wonderful. The third step on the journey, master the medium. I don't know how many of you in the room are old enough to remember this little picture. This is what television used to look like in the 80s and the 90s, right? And back then, we didn't have enough content on hand. So when we didn't have content, the ads were actually pretty entertaining. I mean, some of us, when I was younger, used to look out for the ads because that was a form of entertainment. You didn't have TV running 24/7. Forget social media. And so it was all right for brands to be a bit lazy or standard with their approach to advertising. But things have changed now. I mean, as a brand, we're competing with cute cat pictures, and it's not easy to get the attention of the consumer when that's on the screen. So we're not just competing with our direct competitors on social. We're not just competing with influencers, with hotels and airlines, but also these pictures. And to really stand out, I think it's very, very important for brands to start really understanding the medium and what works there. And again, if I have to praise some brands recently, I think Liquid Death, phenomenal job on the internet. Duolingo, we've talked enough and more about them. They're doing some very interesting work on picking up things and moments that really are relevant for the internet and doing something about it. We at lastminute.com have just started unearthing that journey of cracking social media, but I'd like to share a quick video about it.
Yes. Is that seriously? Like, I love her, but she's kind of a problem. No, and I hope that she's okay, and I felt super bad, but I'm also like,
and I love her, but like,
I love her, but she isn't.
Dropping in to say that you don't need to break the bank to go on holiday.
cheese and pickle.
So yeah, I think the big theme here is really what's relevant for the internet, what's trending, and how can the brand authentically then be a part of that conversation. The fourth point, consistently land the message across all touch points. Now, very often as brand teams, we sit in rooms, we design these big strategies, and we go and brief agencies and push that out. But if you go to the person in finance and say, hey, what is the one message we're trying to tell the consumer? The guy might not know. And why this is important is because everyone in the company, the better they understand what we're trying to do with the consumer, the easier it is to land the message with the consumer. Because without really realizing the brand is playing a role at so many touch points, and very, very often, it's a very secluded department in the organization. So it's very important to take everyone on that journey along in terms of ensuring that we land the message consistently and authentically externally. Also, as brand marketeers, we see our work so many times that we get tired of our own messages. But if you think of the brands that have successfully and consistently landed messages, are the ones who haven't really changed their brand taglines. They've changed the adaptation of it. They've changed the understanding of it. Red Bull gives you wings. It's been around for 30 plus years. Nike, just do it. It's been around forever. It's not the tagline that needs to change sometimes. It is the understanding of what it actually means for the consumer based on the region, based on the category. So don't jump to change that message very quickly because you might not have fully even landed it. And here's a beautiful example of how I lived my Red Bull life. When I talk about consistently landing the message across all touch points, at Red Bull, we were not just telling external customers about, gives you wings. We were living that life. We had graffiti on walls. We had every meeting that started with either a dance or sometimes a trek, and it was a part of the culture that we lived in. And that's what made the brand so authentic, because everyone understood what's going on and lived it day in and day out. And finally, I think it's important for brands to take a few risks. I'm not saying risk-taking is important and required for every brand, but I think the brands that do go out there and take a few risks are the ones who have higher probability of winning in this cluttered landscape. And again, picking up from Red Bull, who remembers this jump from 2012? Right? It was massive. We're talking 12 years later. Mind you, it was a double-digit million investment. I wasn't at Red Bull at that time, but it was a massive marketing investment. But here we are 12 years later talking about it. The stats were phenomenal. It's one of the most watched video on YouTube till date. 8% of the internet bandwidth that day was on this video. So yes, it was a heavy investment, but from a long-term perspective, 12 years later, if people are still talking about it, it did have an impact. But not every brand has that budget. Not every brand has that appetite. So I'm going to show you a quick example of what we did at Tour de France last year. Lastminute.com is a sponsor of Tour de France, a niche cycling event that happens every year, which is happening right now. Now, it's a very cluttered sporting event, to be fair. And consumers are not even there to see brands. They're there to see the cyclists, right? So we're talking 50, 70 brands that are vying for the consumer's attention. And the bigger and bolder you go, the probability of getting the consumer's attention is higher. We decided to do the exact opposite. So here's the example of what we did last year.
Lastminute.com was hilarious at the world's biggest cycling event, the Tour de France. While most brands went big in the pre-race caravan, they did the exact opposite, showing up in a small car with a simple cardboard sign. We were supposed to have a fancy triple-decker bus, but we spent the budget on our summer flight plus hotel deals instead. The crowds were surprised, but amused by such a bold move. And social media loved it too.
Stunty for sure, but definitely helped us land the attention that we wanted at the event. So we moved the conversation away from the event, where it was so cluttered, to social media, where we knew we could stand out and get that conversation rolling. So that's pretty much it from my end. I think the message I'll leave you all with, that a brand is a story that's always being told, right? And it frustrates me when I see end-of-year presentation where brand is a section and we give updates about brand metrics, because brand is not a part of the presentation. Brand is the presentation. How we land the presentation is pretty much what the brand should be all about. Thank you.